Good evening. Welcome to the April 7th, 2025 Pros Commission meeting. I am the vice chair at the moment, and with that, because Brendan is not here, or Commissioner Moran is not here, and I'll pass it over to you, Mike.
Yeah, so I'm going to start with the roll call. Commissioner Colson? Conson? I apologize.
Here.
Commissioner Pinkstaff?
Here.
Commissioner Oler?
Here.
Vice Chair. I'm getting mixed up here. So, yeah, Vice Chair Cook?
Here.
And Commissioner Garland?
Here.
Thank you. Let it be noted, everybody is here except for Chair Moran.
Well, our first order of business is, if you'll hang in there with us for a minute, is the new election of the new chair and vice chair. Being the acting chair, I am in need of someone to nominate somebody for the permanent new chair.
I nominate Jason Cook, the current vice chair, to be the chair for the next year.
I second that nomination.
Great, I'll take roll. Commissioner Conson?
Just a thumbs up is good.
Commissioner Pinkstaff?
Yes.
Commissioner Garland?
Yes.
Commissioner Oler?
Yes.
And Vice Chair, soon to be Chair, Commissioner Cook.
Yes.
Let it be noted. And Commissioner Moran is not present here tonight.
And with that, we will move to our vice chair for the upcoming year, and I nominate Commissioner Pinkstaff. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Excellent. I'll call roll call. Commissioner Conson?
Yes.
Commissioner Oler?
Yes.
Commissioner Garland?
Yes.
Chair Cook?
Yes.
And new Vice Chair Pinkstaff.
Yes.
And let it be noted that Commissioner Moran is not here. Thank you.
All right, the fanfare is over. On to public. Should we change chairs, sir, Mike, or is there an official? Yeah. Now it's official. Okay. This public communications, this portion of the meeting is reserved for comment on items not on the agenda. Under the Brown Act, the Commission cannot act on items raised during public communications, but may respond briefly to statements made or questions posed, request clarification, or refer the item to staff. Does any member of the public wish to speak on any item not on the agenda? At this time, I will ask the secretary if there are any members of the public who would like to provide comments. I do see we have one comment card here tonight from Barbara Guinness.
Hello, everybody. My name is Barbara Guinness. I've been a resident of Walnut Creek since 1996. We all know the open space staff completes many tasks within our open spaces that are positives, and we thank them for that. And we know that city staff holds in high esteem the 2020 Trail Committee document. However, did you know that city staff does a lot of picking and choosing from that document, selecting some items they find important? Did you know that throughout the document it states the value of community input and outreach? However, did you know the community is shut out of information regarding open space plans? Did you know that throughout the document there are statements regarding the importance of enforcement of the rules and municipal codes? Did you know the Trail Committee document states the importance of rangers' ability to issue citations? However, did you know in the August 2023 pros meeting, city staff stated they will not be doing enforcement? Did you know the trail document lists a recommendation to develop and implement a volunteer patrol program? However, when you ask about that, questions are ignored. Did you know the trail committee stated it would add educational and informational material to the open space kiosks? However, did you know that city staff was offered volunteer kiosk maintenance assistance by a trusted nonprofit group, but the city staff decided that wasn't a good idea? As pros commissioners, you're all aware of your role per the city code. You're to advise, review, and make recommendations to city council. So why is city staff allowed to pick and choose what they want to implement in our open spaces without serious consideration of commissioner or citizen comments? Thank you for serving on that pros commission and for all you do for the open spaces.
Thank you very much. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak tonight on items not on the agenda? Okay, with that, we move on to the next agenda item, which is the consent calendar. Do any commissioners have questions on the consent calendar items? If no questions, then we will move on to public comment. And does any member of the public wish to provide public comment on the consent calendar item? Secretary Vickers, are there any members of the public who wish to provide comments?
I'm not seeing any, and we've not received any speaker cards.
Okay. With that, we will move on, okay, commissioner comments. If there are no commissioner questions or comments on the consent item, we'll ask for a secretary roll call.
Yes, we need a motion.
I move we approve the consent calendar items, approval of the minutes of the pros commission meeting on February 3rd, and acceptance of the facility rentals annual report.
Second.
I'll second.
Thank you. I'll call roll. Commissioner Conson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Pinkstaff,
Yes.
Commissioner Garland,
Yes.
Commissioner Oler,
Yes.
and Chair Cook.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Next on the agenda is an item for commission consideration, the pros commission staff report regarding the open space annual weed abatement program.
So I'm going to be providing that presentation. I'm actually going to do it from the podium, so I'm not turning and looking at you. I can stand and face you in the screen. So I'm going to step up front. So good evening. For the record, my name is Mike Vickers. I'm the Assistant Public Works Director for the City of Walnut Creek. And I think most of you remember back in, I think it was the December meeting, I had reached out, as part of a staff update, I had reached out and said that there were a number of items that we were going to be considering for this upcoming calendar year. It was the Creek Master Plan. We talked about that briefly, and also updating the Parks 2026 plan. I didn't get an opportunity to provide those because I thought that this was more timely for this meeting and some of these other topics that are going to come up in the second half of the meeting. As you can imagine, with the fires that Northern California has experienced over the last 6 or 7, 8 years, coupled with the fire that we just went through or just was completed down in Los Angeles, we're getting a ton of questions, a lot of feedback, not only about our urban forest and people's trees that are on their property, the fact that they're losing their insurance, some of these people are, but also how we are going about protecting the open space and the surrounding properties around the open space. I think most of you know that the vast majority of our open space is backed up to. We share a property line with a lot of residential properties. So I'm just going to share with you an annual weed abatement program that we go through, along with some changes that we make depending on the year and the type of weather that we receive. So I'll talk about fuel load, grazing, and then get more into detail with our fire breaks. So our vegetation management plan really starts with our fire protection, and you can see from the slide here, we have about 78 miles of fire breaks that are conducted in the open space every year. And those are done really in 3 different methods, whether it's through disking, string trimming. You're going to hear me talk about string trimming. I'm really talking about running a weed eater, and then our mechanical mowing equipment. And then we've really expanded our grazing program over the last number of years. And then we're going to talk a little bit at the end here about our fuel reduction project, which is new this year, based on a proclamation that the governor put out back on March 1st. So disking, we have, will that come up, Orlando, if I click on it? So we have about, about 18 miles of disking. The county requires fire breaks to be no less than 30 feet. As you'll see here in this image, we do somewhere between, well, it says 30. We don't do anything at 30 feet. We do everything minimum of 40 feet to 70 feet in some areas, depending on the particular area and depending on the weather we get that year. Some drought years, we don't get, the vegetation doesn't get as high and doesn't require a 70-foot break. So it just really depends on the area and the weather that we're getting. And I'll show you some examples. Okay, I can go here. So I'm trying to get really fancy today and moving into some Google Earth images to show you folks exactly what takes place. So this is YVR. This pathway here is for the upper tunnel, the concrete tunnel, and you can see these disc lines vary in width right through this area. They're all about 70 feet. I don't know how many of you remember, but back in 17 or 18, we had a really serious fire that started in this location that burned about 600 acres, got very close to some fences and property lines. And the following year, we had the same fire. We had the fire start in the same location. And due to the year prior, we doubled the size of the disc line, and the fire marshal was adamant that it was the width of that disc line the second year around is what stopped that fire. We could have been in even worse danger the second year around because of the wind. So we're always looking, I say always, all of us, Corey Frazier and the ranger staff are always looking to update how we go about our weed abatement program in a number of areas. So moving on, this is a pretty large community, about 210 homes, the Rancho Paraiso community. Just to give you an idea, there are areas over here where we have to disc. These are disc lines. And then in between the disc line, we have a V-ditch, and then we have some additional property that run along the back of their fence line. So not only are we disking in these locations, but we're also running our string trimmers and periodically our mowers in some of these areas if they're large enough. Just to give you a better look. So this is another disc line here. From here to this location is easily 70 feet, sometimes 80 feet. And then we have a fire road up here that gets to be about 30 feet in width. So to support the disc line. Give you another example of what's going on over in Shell Ridge. So for those of you who are aware, this is the Marshall entrance here. This is Indian Valley School. You can see these disc lines are really quite large down through here. This wraps around, if you follow along the property lines, takes you much closer to the lake, to Lakewood back in this location. And it's mostly disking back here. There are areas that we have to mow and string trim, but the vast majority of this is disking. Every once in a while there'll be a break because there'll be a rock outcropping or something along those lines, and we'll have to get in there and do more of it by hand. I'm trying to find the lake. Oh, there's the lake, just to give you an idea where we're at. Okay, so that's generally what we're doing with disking. In terms of, let me get this back to, here we go. So like I said, hand abatement, it's oftentimes the slopes are too steep for equipment. There's V-ditches in the way, or there's rock outcropping, something along those lines that forces us into weed abatement. And we don't do anything less than 40 feet, as I mentioned earlier. And this is not a fun task. We contract some of it out because we do have 11 miles of 40-foot or wider, which takes a considerable amount of time. We also string trim all of the single track trails, which was about 13 miles, and you prune one side and you prune back the other side. So it's approximately 25 miles of single track trails what we're weed eating. We have some mowers. We have a smaller mower than this one to get in some other areas. Depending on the location of the fire road, we try to get our fire breaks up to about 30 feet, and they are often, as you know, running through the middle of the park. We do about 60 miles of mechanical mowing and string trimming in total. I've given a number of updates over the years about our grazing program. Back in 2015 or 16, we started adding more troughs in the open space with the help and support from the Conservation District, also some federal funding. And so we have a pretty robust program. It's changed a little bit in the last couple of years. We used to do what's called rotational grazing. Actually, we always did the traditional grazing. Then we moved into rotational grazing because of the feedback we were getting from the community about the cattle pockmarking some of the trails and making it uncomfortable to walk on. And in some cases, you just couldn't get out there because the soils were too wet and the cattle were just leaving too many impressions. And so we moved towards rotational grazing. In order to rotational graze, you have to have a water source. And so we started putting these troughs in different locations in order to build these pastures. And it's easier to control where you're grazing and where you're not. Some of these areas, based on the direction of sunlight, might get more vegetation than another, and so we can move the cattle around. The problem we've had over the last couple of years is vandalism. Whether it's hikers or bikers or walkers, people going by with knives and cutting the electric fence leaves a gap in the fence, which obviously leaves an opportunity for the cattle to get outside the grazed areas. We have to call the rancher. Ranchers don't typically live here locally. The ranchers have to come out, either bring their horses out, whether it's horseback or whether it's on a four-wheeler. Get the cattle back into the pasture in which they were originally in, fix the fence, go away. The next day, the same thing happens. And so we've moved away from, I say we moved away, the rancher has moved away and is no longer providing the service. In fact, we can't find a rancher to provide rotational grazing service anymore. East Bay Regional's having the same problem. And so we're back to the traditional roaming. And so we've adjusted the times in which the cattle come in. It says June here. Oftentimes the cattle come in around the end of May and they graze through October. That means they're here during the dry season and they're not having an impact on those trails like they have during the wet season. As you can see here, we're grazing over 50% of Shell Ridge. We're grazing, probably about 30 to 40% of Lime Ridge. Sugarloaf is probably 80%, and we continue to expand our goat grazing over at Ockalani's, and we're up to about 15 acres this year. So here's just some quick maps to give you an idea of where we're grazing in these locations. This is a project that we started a few years ago. We added a number of troughs in Shell Ridge about 3 years ago to expand our grazing to the east. The troughs you can see identified there with those dark colored squares, that basically runs along Coral Springs. And there's a number of reasons we put them there. First of all, we get a fair amount of equestrians in Shell Ridge, so the horses can also use those troughs. But now we can basically fill and empty those troughs in order to determine where the cattle are in those areas, because they have to be close to a source of water. So it's beneficial for those reasons. The other thing we're doing in this area is we're adjusting the fencing lines. and so that we can get more of the we can graze more and also protect some of the open space foundations projects that are in that area. For example, Bob Simmons has had a project over by Deer Lake for a number of years. He's planted over 100 trees, and they're probably pretty tasty around this point for the cattle. So we're fencing those areas off in order to protect the environment. So this is the last slide for this presentation. As I mentioned, the governor put out a proclamation, state of emergency, and is, pushing us to apply any wildlife preparedness projects that we can in our jurisdiction. And so one of the projects that we've set forward this year is to start removing any dead vegetation that is 6 inches or less in diameter. And so we are circling the perimeter. We're starting by circling the perimeter of the open space, 200 feet out from the property line, the boundary line that we share. And we're slowly gathering and chipping or removing any limbs or trunks that are 6 inches or less. Why 6 inches or less? It's typically suggested to do 3 inches or less. And if you think about it, in a fire, a 3-inch limb is going to catch fire much quicker than a 12-inch limb because of the density of the wood. And so we wanted to up it a little bit, and so we're taking out anything that is 6 inches or less around that 200-foot perimeter around the open space. We're not going to be able to accomplish all this in 1 year. We've started the program. We're going to see it through, and then we'll work in interior of the open space and start picking and choosing where we're going to start pulling those limbs out. So historically, there's always been a big push to leave those limbs in place. They'll break down. Bugs will come in there and break the wood down. The birds will come and eat the bugs. It's part of nature. But with the challenges that we're facing, with the dry vegetation out there and the proclamation from the governor, we're moving in this direction. So that concludes my presentation, and I'll open it up for questions.
Commissioner, questions for Mike?
Mike, thanks very much for the presentation. It certainly is timely with the LA area fires that happened earlier in the year. In front of everybody's mind that owns a home near the open space, especially with the maps having changed in terms of the risks. I have a question about our program. We are under annual deadlines for doing this remediation, and those the results of our remediation are also inspected. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, thank you for asking that question. The deadline changes every year based on the later the rainfall. So they're measuring the moisture within the soil, the moisture within the plant, along with wind temperatures and humidity and those types of things. But they don't change that much, to be honest with you. It's usually a couple weeks. So typically, if there was an average, it's usually by June 1st to June 7th is when weed abatement is supposed to be complete. Depending on the season, it's not uncommon for many agencies to reach out to their fire inspector for that area and ask them for an extension because of one issue or another. It's also common for Walnut Creek to invite the inspector out to go through some of the areas that might be more challenging. We don't tour them through. Obviously, they have access. We'd be more than happy to take them wherever. But sometimes we have areas that could be challenging, and we want to bring them out to get their feedback on and maybe some suggestions on how to proceed. But it's a little bit of a moving target, but it's generally June 1st to June 7th is when weed abatement has to be complete.
And the inspections are done, in our case, by
a Contra Costa County fire inspector from the Fire Protection District. Like a lot of government agencies, this individual who's new, I can't remember his or her name, is got a massive territory. And so a lot of it is driven by complaint. And so if you're a resident listening to this and you're concerned as we get near the end of May or beginning of June and it's not done, I recommend that you reach out to the Public Works Department. And if you're not satisfied, you can always reach out to the Contra Costa County Fire Protection District, and they'll come out based on complaints. We have such a small amount of open space compared to the East Bay Regionals and the Mid-Penns and state parks and those types of things that they're typically coming out based on request.
Thank you, Mike.
Mike, thanks for the information. Very interesting. On the vandals, what's the point of any idea who was cutting the electrical fencing?
No, it's
Point
kind
of
of
that,
like
or-
the pointless graffiti that we're, putting out on a regular basis. What's interesting about electric fencing, you'd think to yourself, why would someone want to cut an electric wire with a knife? Oftentimes what happens is the ground gets so dry, there's not enough moisture in there to make those wires actually produce a shock. They almost go neutral because there's not enough moisture in the soil. And so once somebody understands that it's not going to shock them, they'll continue to do so. And it doesn't just happen in one particular park. It happens throughout the open space. So
I assume the city's responsible for maintaining the fire roads?
we are, yes.
How often, because it seems like towards the end of a rainy season, May or something, they'll come through and with a tractor and smooth out the fire roads. That's an annual event as well?
Absolutely, and I'm glad you brought that up. The fire district used to come out. It was an opportunity to partner with the city, but it was also an opportunity to train their staff on running their motor graders. And what happens when they run the motor grader is one way or the other they put a windrow up, which prevents drainage and causes drainage issues as we get into the winter months. And so we've asked that we do the fire road. Not asked. We've notified them that we're going to do the fire roads on our own and be more than happy to tour them around in their big rigs to make sure that they're done to their satisfaction. Yeah, we touch base with them every spring.
Okay.
Yeah, the operators. Yeah.
Interesting. As far as any update on the poppy situation at Sutherland? How did it go this year? Or is it still too early?
It's a little early, but I'll give you an update during staff updates if that's okay with you.
Yeah, sorry.
Did this picture spark that? Is that
Yeah.
what that was?
Yeah.
Yes.
Couldn't help but wonder. It's been kind of quiet, so I think that's good news, right? Any other questions for Mike?
I just have a question about the fuel load reduction that's required by the governor. Is there like a final reporting that the city has to do for that piece?
Not to the best of my knowledge.
Okay,
No, they're asking all of us land managers to do what we can.
okay,
I think there's some grant funding if there's not enough funding within the agency in order to work through your programs. We're comfortable with where we are in the funding, and so I'll double check, but I don't believe a report is required.
thank you.
Okay. I understand you have more.
Yeah, we're going to get into consideration here,
Okay.
and then Kevin with Arts and Rec is going to give a presentation, and I'll be following him up.
Okay. So next on the agenda is an item for the commission consideration, the pros commission staff report.
No, that's okay. Hey, good evening, commissioners. My name is Kevin Gordon. I'm the business manager for the Arts and Recreation Department, and I'm here tonight to present the proposed changes to the fees and charges schedule for programs and facility rentals for the fiscal years 26 and 27. Every 2 years, as part of the biennial budget development process, the department also reviews the existing fees and charges and recommends changes to the fee ranges. So how do these ranges work? What Walnut Creek does is we set, instead of setting specific fees here, we set the fee ranges, and then staff work within these ranges to set those specific fees for classes and other programs. So tonight we're considering a few changes that staff are recommending for the master fee schedule, which includes eliminating certain fee categories, creating new fee categories, increasing the ranges for some fees, and modifying some of the minimum and maximums for facility rental hours. In determining these fees, the Arts and Rec staff does surveys of similar municipalities to make sure that we're being competitive. we take into account the cost of programming and we adjust for trends in the market. So as costs to provide programming increase, we need to increase certain associated fees in order to maintain our cost recovery goals as a department. Much of the cost increases that we've been seeing are due to rising personnel costs. So that's going to be between our full-time city staff and our hourly support staff for our programs. One of the drivers of that was the recently mandated increase to the minimum wage that took effect this past January. So in many of the fee categories, we're nearing the top of the currently approved ranges. And so staff are recommending to expand these ranges to accommodate for potential future fee increases. So I'll mention that increasing the ranges doesn't necessarily mean it's an immediate increase to the fee. It can mean that we're adding new programming that might have a different fee that currently exists outside of the range for that certain category. It might also mean that we're offering a different way to pay for programs like the aquatics monthly passes. I'm not going to go into detail about every single fee change because there's quite a few in there, but I will point out a few of the more significant changes. In some areas, we're proposing changes to the rental requirements for facilities. This is due in part to the planned demolition for the Heather Farm Community Center that's going to take place later this summer. So we're proposing to shorten some of the minimum hour requirements for other facilities that we expect are going to be taking some of those rental clients that would have been going to Heather Farm. So that's specifically going to be the Shadelands Auditorium and the Civic Park Community Center, or Civic Park Assembly Hall, I mean. We're hoping that this will allow us to keep some of the rental clients by offering them more flexible booking windows. In facility rentals, we're also recommending eliminating split day fees. So in the past, this meant that we would charge one fee Fridays before 5 o'clock and a different fee Fridays after 5 o'clock. So we're eliminating the language in the fee schedule that references these split day fees because it's kind of unnecessarily complicated and can be a little confusing. And so we're moving to a standard just all day Friday fee. I'll also point out that on that subject that there's one line on the third page of the schedule that should have had a strike through in there. On reviewing, I saw that it didn't. Forgive the omission, but we are proposing to eliminate that language. It's under the Assembly Hall fees on the third page. It is highlighted in red, it just didn't get the strike through. For aquatics fees, we're proposing to expand some of the ranges to allow for more flexibility with monthly passes and offer different amounts of punches with those passes. We're also proposing a new fee category for children under 2. In the past, we had a range that was for children under 6. And so doing one for children under 2 is going to give us more flexibility and also is going to be more inclusive for families with small children because the under 2 fee is going to be significantly less than the current under 6 fee. Finally, we're also proposing a new category for synthetic turf field rental. This will apply to sports fields 1 and 2 at Heather Farm Park. And they are planned to be converted by this fall to synthetic turf. So those are some of the top line changes. There are quite a few more, but they're mostly expanding those ranges that I talked about to give staff more flexibility for programming. But with that, I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Questions for Kevin?
Thanks for coming tonight to explain this to us. I do have a few questions. One, I wanted to confirm that the proposed fee range for fiscal year 2026 and 2027 will take us to the end of June 2027. Is that correct?
Yes, it'll take us through the end of the fiscal year. So yeah, that would
Right.
be the end of June. Yeah.
And the reason I asked that question is the Heather Farm project, the combination community center and aquatics facility is scheduled to be completed in July of that year, 2027. So I would assume then you'd be back here in 2 years with a new proposal for the 28, 29 years, which would include the use of the new facilities because they're not listed at all.
Yeah, so we haven't included those here. So that would be in 2 years when we come back and do this again. And in the meantime, the department is currently working with certain cost recovery consultants that are going to be advising us
Sure.
on what sort of rates we'll be charging for those facilities and,
Right.
and other associated
Okay.
programs.
Great. Okay, then I had a couple of other questions or comments on the indoor facility rentals.
Sure.
Right below the title, you specify the minimum 2 hours. And yet, in many, many cases, you override that and you put different numbers of minimums based on the specific facility in red, the proposal.
Yeah. So the ones in red are going to be more specific to some of the larger facilities where it makes more sense to have a longer minimum hour requirement, because oftentimes you wouldn't be able to book it out if you had, someone coming in for 1 hour here, 1 hour there, could break up the day, and then you wouldn't have the blocks of time that
Right.
you need to meet those cost recovery goals.
Right, so would it be more appropriate to also alter that language, minimum 2 hours, to add unless otherwise noted, something to that effect?
Yeah, that can absolutely be added.
Yeah, I just trying to make this as good a document as possible when it goes to city council.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm happy to add that in.
And then I had one other question relative to the discussion, or not discussion, but the area for tennis. The rates there, I'm looking for it. Anyway, the question is this. I know that the tennis rates can apply to not just the tennis courts at Heather Farm. They can apply to other areas within the city, tennis courts that are under control of, I believe it's Lifetime. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's correct.
So at Heather Farm, over the last several years, I think 4, maybe 5 pickleball courts have been constructed or changed, modified, but I think actively now exist, and there are no fee rates included in the structure here for use of those courts by pickleball. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe that's correct. Tim, are you familiar with the racket sports? Yeah.
Hi, Jim Carlson, Recreation Manager. At this time, the pickleball that's being run at the Heather Farm Community Center. I haven't identified any specific call out for their different fee structure for the pickleball. Now, we can certainly go back to them and make sure, talk it through with them, make sure they've addressed it. But for this report, for where we're at right now in the process, they haven't identified anything specific for the pickleball courts that I've seen. I've only seen what they've talked about as far as the tennis courts.
So when you say that, are you saying that there is no fee or that they charge a fee based on the tennis rates?
I think what they're charging is a fee based on how many players are on the court. Not currently on the court fee, but by the player fee for pickleball.
So technically, shouldn't that be called out separately here?
Well,
Or reference that these rates also include pickleball at Heather Farm?
what
I know
I
they're
think-
not charged at Rudger.
Yeah, I think what we need to do is go back and talk with the Lifetime Tennis and let me get the facts exactly straight before we present, because I don't want to give you the wrong information on that.
Okay, I just, I think of when I see those courts and I see the players there, because I'm frequently over in that area, what would be the difference whether you're playing tennis or whether you're playing pickleball on those courts? It should all be,
Yeah, they're both racket sports.
I think, but it's just a question.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
I have a question about the youth, the students' fee at Boundary Oak. So there's no change, right?
To the Boundary Oak fee?
Yeah.
Let me take that. Yeah, I don't believe so. I think
Okay.
that the current fee range still accommodates where what we're charging.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm wondering about, you have a category called media production.
Mm.
Do you get many requests for that?
No, we do not. I think that we've had maybe one event in the past 5 years that caused that category to exist, and so it's just something to have just in case.
Okay, and do you recall, was it a private company or was it like a public service
No,
announcement?
I wasn't
or-
involved with it at the
Oh.
time, so I can get back to you on.
I was
on
just
that, yeah.
curious, really, I was more curious because it seemed like a low fee if it's like for using a facility for all day.
Yeah, I think it's just a generous range, just because it's kind of a catch-all.
Yeah, okay,
a
I
lot,
was just
yeah,
curious.
yeah.
Okay, and just to fully understand, I'm reading the one about where you're doing a special event in a park.
Mm.
So it's really the sum of all these things. It's the turf rehab, it's the fee just to have your event, and then there's a parking fee, and then there's like all those things are added up. So, or is this like, let's say the $705 for a 500-person event per day? That includes all those things, or are those
No, this is specifically just the
just to be able to have your
yeah,
event
just
there?
the fee portion, and then the
Okay, and
turf
then you add all the
rehabilitation
other
and parking
things
is
in.
going to be
Okay.
separate. Yeah.
All right. Okay. And I have one more question. When you're comparing, like you said, that you have a range, so you have flexibility, and do you have a certain group of other agencies that you believe are comparable, or like, how does that part of it work?
Yeah, for the most part, it's going to be, nearby municipalities of similar sizes. We look at Danville, Concord, Alamo for their programming and make sure that we're not way off the chart in any low or high end. And certain East Bay municipalities, and it's a pretty wide-ranging survey that we do. So it's going to include a lot of other cities in Contra Costa and Alameda counties.
Thank you.
We have obviously a swim group called Walnut Creek Masters. Do they pay these rates that you have listed here?
So for the masters and the other swim groups that we have, they negotiate on a contract basis. And so those contracts typically follow the fiscal year's 2-year cycle. So those get renegotiated every 2 years.
Okay, so those are not included here.
Those are not included. You'll see on those lines, I think it just says contract, because those are done individually by contract. So that's for Aqua Bears, Aquanuts, Masters, and Walnut Creek Swim Club.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Got it. And then, good question on the pickleball, Art, because that is a hot topic around here.
Yeah.
So, I guess that's really those are my only questions. How does, I know we've had a lot of maintenance issues at the farm pool. Obviously, that's why we're replacing it. How do when you're buying a pass for a 30-day pass, none of these are specific to a time period. These are based on number of days you swam.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure how the pass works is the monthly pass, it'll have different numbers of punches. You'll have 10, 20, or 30 punch passes. So it'll be based on, time
Yeah,
that you go.
gotcha. And it's not like a 1 month pass. It's a 30-day, 30 swim pass.
They don't expire. It's just the punch number.
Gotcha. What kind of communication do you have? Do you notify the various swim groups of these admission rates as they get updated? Or?
Yeah, if we do increase fees or change fees in any way, we typically notice those well in advance to make sure that people are aware of the change.
Yeah, one of the big pieces that came out of the negotiations for the swim, the new pool, was just better communication from the city with those groups.
Mm-hmm.
So I would just comment that even if it's just a cursory email to let them know that you're thinking about them, that they had expressed that they would be interested in more communication.
Okay, absolutely. We can do that.
So if there's no other questions and you're comfortable making a motion based on the recommendations for the ranges, we can do so. And if you want a list that, you're comfortable accepting the report and moving it forward with some of the exceptions that were noted earlier, that would be helpful.
Okay, I think that's all, Kevin.
So if you want to make a
Yeah,
motion?
I move that we accept the rec fees and changes for fiscal 26 and 27 for forwarding after changes discussed to the city council for approval.
I'll second the motion.
Excellent, thank you. I'll call roll. Commissioner Conson?
Yes.
Commissioner Oler?
Yes.
Vice Chair Pinkstaff?
Yes.
Commissioner Garland?
Yes.
And Chair Cook?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously.
Next is an update, consideration item number B, an update from the Walnut Creek Trail Committee.
Thank you, Orlando. And I may need to get back online again. If you can put that mouse up here, yeah, that's great. Thank you. I've been up here a number of times providing updates on the Trail Committee document that was accepted by the Commission back in December of 20. It was that document that lists a number of recommendations, some additional information, which also led to the flow trail discussion. And so every few months, I'm trying to come back to the Commission with some updates on where we're at in regards to the list of recommendations. To take one step back even further, this was a community volunteers that had come together to serve on this committee. The committee was led by two commissioners. Commissioner Oler was one of those. Commissioner Davenport, who has retired off of this body, was the second. We had a number of members from the Open Space Foundation. We had representatives from hikers and runners, along with a couple individuals that were supporting and in support of biking. And so we were trying to touch on all bases, and we brought our thoughts and our studies together over about a 2-year period, which led to this document that you guys received in attachment 1 of the staff report. And so I'm back here tonight to talk more specifically about a couple social trails that I'll be sharing with you in just a minute. But I also want to take a minute to kind of update you on where we're at with the list of 17 recommendations that came out of that report. And the list of 17 recommendations can also be found on page 17. So there's a lot of information up here. I'm not going to get into each one of these, but we did identify in red where we're at with some of these, actually with all of the recommendations. And as you can see, the first 7 or first 6, they're either completed or they're ongoing. Typically, if they're ongoing, it's because it is going to be continually ongoing because it's now become part of our maintenance standards. So if there's anything that pops out to you, we can talk about it during questions and those types of things. A number of other 6 or 7 other suggestions here. You see the middle one there. Evaluating trails. That's what I'm going to be talking about today. So that's something we're currently working on. And the other list is mostly ongoing maintenance needs that will continue. And then the last 5 here, it's noted there, the O in the middle there is not complete. And it was brought up by the speaker earlier than during public comment that we have not developed a volunteer patrol program as of yet. And a volunteer patrol program is actually really, really important and a high priority for us. One of the challenges we're having is what I'm going to be sharing with you tonight. There are some social trails that we have allowed access to because people have been using them since the early 90s in some cases. And they are, I'll get into the details, but until we can until we can put all of these in a box and hand them off to a volunteer, it wouldn't be fair if we had some other gray areas out there such as this. And I know there's going to be a discussion and more comments regarding citations and those types of things. Citations is put to the side. The open space staff, the open space rangers enforce every day that they're out there. Are they out there writing citations? No, they're not. If we need to get the Fish and Game wardens involved, if we need to get Walnut Creek PD involved to help with citation writing, they're just a phone call away. And the open space rangers combined have been doing this for about 60 years, and they're really, really good at their job. The educational enforcement that has been in place for decades is very effective. We proved that during COVID when we had the most amount of users we'd ever seen in the open space, and we were still able to dial back the number of social trails, and many of them have grown back in. We had tremendous success during the highest percent of users in the open space. The educational enforcement is working very well. Okay, so moving on, this is in page 13 or 14, I can't remember exactly, of that document. And these were trails that were identified through the committee as something to be looked at as potentially sanctioning as we move forward. And so we're starting that process. We have a longer road to go, but we've identified a trail in Lime Ridge. We've also identified one in Shell Ridge that I'll share with you. And in this particular trail, I'm going to say where it starts and finishes, but obviously you can come in different directions. But generally, people come in from the Buckeye Trail side or off the Ohlone Trail side, and this meanders through the quarry. That you'll see that this is the prominent quarry that stands out as you're driving up YVR. Here's kind of a better look at it. So if you're driving up YVR, which you can see goes across the top of this slide, you'll see that really dominant face there. And the trail itself has an intersection right there above the quarry. And so the line to the farthest right is where the trail would start at the Buckeye Canyon, and it meanders down through, overlooking a number of quarries and areas that have been dug out over the years. It gets into that circle area, and the reason I identified that circle area, there's a lot of spurs in that area in terms of other social trails that have been developed. And so the plan is that staff is going to move forward and install additional barriers. Unfortunately, we had a very serious accident in this location last year. We've since then fenced the area off, but there's some other areas that we want to fence off to protect the environment and give some of these areas an opportunity to revegetate. And so there's a fair amount of additional work. If you've been up in this area, and I hope you have, it's a even though it's an unsanctioned trail, it's still very actively used. In fact, if you go back on Google Earth, you can see images of this trail going all the way back to '93, and the park never opened till '97. And so they were obviously using private land for their exercise. But this particular area, as you come around the corner, there's some steeper areas that we plan on installing stairs, a handful of stairs, 6 or 7 stairs, and then the bike lane will be off to the right or left of that. I can't remember which. And then there's another spot a little bit further down where we'll be installing stairs for pedestrian and runners, pedestrian access. And then next to that, there'll be a safe area for bicyclists to go down. And then the trail itself goes in 2 different directions. So if you focus on the intersection, you'll see that the trail goes up the slide, and I think that's where it ties into the Ohlone Trail, or it meanders all the way down to the bottom of the slide where it ties into the Manzanita Trail, which is not too far from the police shooting range and the golf course there. And so I should have mentioned this when I started, and I apologize I didn't. The reason we're bringing these trail options to you no differently than we did with the flow trail is because we want to have a public conversation about it, and we want to hear from the residents. We want to hear from the pros commissioners. But it's important for me to point out, and as I mentioned, I should have shared this already, these are operational type decisions. So the open space is moving, the open space staff is moving in this direction. So I wanted to say that now. Your input is certainly valued, we haven't got there just yet, and so please share your questions and comments as we move through the process. So as identified here, it's about a 1 mile additional loop. Mind you, it's been there. It's just going to be sanctioned. It'll eventually end up on the map. This trail is being identified as a multi-use trail because that is the existing condition that has been around for several decades. So moving on to Shell Ridge, this is also in the document that was accepted by the Pros Commission in 2020. There's a number, if you look closely enough, you'll see it. There's a number of trails identified here, and they're all listed, or they're all shown in different colors. This is a smaller trail that is about a ½ acre. It takes you, it's not too far from Borges Ranch. It's really starts at the Hannah Grove Lane Trail, which is just about a block or two from Northgate High School. You venture up the trail, I'd say probably a ½ mile to 3/4 of a mile, and then there is a single track trail that will take you from the Hannah Lane Trail cut across to the Costanoan Trail, which then you could go left or right. If you went right, it would circle you right back to the trailhead that you started. And this trail's been active by both hikers and bikers for a number of years. It's not set up for both uses, and so our recommendation is to go pedestrian only in this particular area, which isn't well received by some. And I'll get into our evaluation criteria in just a minute and kind of be able to share that with you. But what's important about authorizing this trail, not only has it been there for a long time, it actually provides you a better loop. So you could, if you didn't take this cut through, you could go up and do a 2.5, 3 mile loop. If you take this cut through, it'll break your hike down to about a 1.5 miles. And so some people, it's fairly steep elevation. Some people only want to go a shorter distance. Like I said, the trail's been in use for several decades, and so we're comfortable authorizing it. I wish I had a better picture of this trail. Here's a closer view of where it is. The trail itself has a very steep uphill. It has about a 2-foot bench or 2-foot tread, and then a very steep downhill. And so we're making it pedestrian only because there's nowhere to step off the side, whether there's an equestrian coming or there's a biker coming. It's just not a safe location for multiple uses. So here's a look at our, I'll zip through here some of these. Here's a look at the trail evaluation criteria checklist that was vetted through the Trails Committee back in 19 and 20. I believe we received this template either from State Parks or East Bay Regional, and we've amended it so that it fits our needs, but it really takes you through all aspects of trail evaluation, whether it's starting with existing conditions and what are the positives and negatives of making this trail work. What are the surfaces, the current uses. What are the current uses on these social trails? Are they already multi-use, and that's been successful for a period of time? Are they single use? Existing volunteers, at what rate or do we have volunteers out there? Is this a high-use area? Is this a high-use trail? Those types of things are considered. Effects on circulation. My eyes aren't very good. On circulation patterns, as I mentioned, if you can put a loop in there, which gives people an opportunity to only go half the distance because they're in a hurry, or they can only deal with half the distance, and we find that to be beneficial. It goes on for soil conditions, safety related issues. Can you get an equestrian and a biker and a hiker all on the same trail? As the example I shared at Shell Ridge, the trail's just far too narrow for more than one use. What are the options that we have for improving safety? One of the big tasks that the committee took on, not only did they help develop this, is we actually met out in the field and we walked one of these trails. In line of sight, is really important, especially when you've got multiple uses on those trails. And there oftentimes you get a lot of switchbacks back and forth, and that can impact your line of sight because of vegetation or grade or whatever the case is. And so line of sight is really important. The steepness, right, because you're typically going to pick up speed on some of these trails. And so that is strongly considered. When we're dealing with situations where we're talking about grade, we have the option to make these trails one directional. And so a biker coming uphill is not going to go the same speed as a biker going downhill. And so if you're hiking downhill, you come across a biker, it's likely those speeds are going to be manageable between the two users. Existing conditions, let me see if I can read. Yeah, so I mentioned soil conditions, the steepness of the slope and what type of erosion will that create. If you've got sandy soils are going to erode quicker. So if you have a valley that is intersecting with a trail, oftentimes you can put in what we call a hardened crossing or an armed crossing, where you're putting rocks out, you're setting rocks in the trail tread that are almost flat like pavers, and so you can walk over those and the water won't erode that particular area away. Improving sustainability for wildlife. I'm going to have to get these bigger. I'm sorry, I can't read that far. Apologize. There's management options. The whole goal of everything that the open space staff is trying to do is build sustainable trails. So we don't get the erosion, so we don't get the impacts, negative impacts that oftentimes end up into our stock ponds, filling our stock ponds. That's why we've been draining a number of them over the years. Sorry, desilting a number of them over the years. Thank you. And then this is the final summary that we use, that the staff uses when they're putting their findings together. And we're going through and checking the boxes, yes and no, and we're making comments regarding installing armored crossings, uphill, downhill, directional. All that information gets is added to the final checklist here. So that concludes my presentation. So your action for tonight, it was to hear the presentation and provide feedback on the recommended improvements. I'll turn it over for questions.
I have a few questions. So this long sheet you just went through with us, this analysis that the staff is doing, the two trails that are being proposed have gone through that.
Correct.
Okay, and the answer came up, yes, this would be would meet these criteria and you move forward. Like, as a percent, how many of the trails in the, has this been applied to in our open spaces?
So I only know of two trails that we've done it formally with, and that's both these trails that were identified in that list of recommendations. However, I say informally, when we were together as a committee, we went out to the Twin Pond Loops Trail, which is near the end of White Cliff, and went out and talked about what criteria we would want to use, what criteria we would want to keep in this list. The original list, like I said, I can't remember if it came from State Parks or East Bay Regional, but I think it was about 8 pages long, and we reduced it down to what we felt would satisfy our needs.
Okay, but there's not an ongoing effort to review all trails to see, for example, whether single track should become multi-use or anything like that.
There is not.
Okay.
Not right now. This will continue. This is our first crack at it.
Yeah.
But we'll continue to evaluate these trails.
Okay.
There are other social trails that are pretty active in the open space that people use that are not on the map, and we're allowing that continued use at this point.
I understand this, and I think I'm not saying it's a good or bad thing, but I'm a little concerned about safety. Like, most of the social trails I know of are like little narrow tracks. So our standard for even a single track is 4 foot. So how are we meshing with those concepts? Are we going to actually go in and make physical changes to those trails, or are we just going to assume liability now that it's a real trail for something that doesn't meet our standard?
Yeah, so it is just that. It's a standard. It doesn't mean that every trail is going to meet this specific letter, of the recommendation. These trails have existed, as I mentioned, for many years. I mean, when it comes to safety, there's no doubt. That's our number one responsibility, is to ensure that these trails are as safe as we can make them. In fact, when the committee was together out surveying a number of these areas, there's trails called Mach 5 that are up at the very top of Lime Ridge that were not safe. We didn't deem them as being safe. We also seen the impacts that they were having on the environment, and so we closed those trails down. The other benefit to these trails is we're not looking to remove any vegetation or any trees for line of sight. So there's no need for any sort of CEQA process or anything along these lines. Now, as I mentioned, the trail in Shell Ridge, it's approximately about 2 feet. Does it meet our 4-foot standard? It does not. That's why we're holding holding it to a pedestrian-only trail.
Okay. And then on the one in Lime Ridge, you said certain areas will have to have stairs put in to accommodate steepness, and
Correct.
the stairs would obviously be pedestrian only, and the ramp or whatever it is would be bikes and or horses, I'm assuming.
Yes, it'd be a slope. There'd be a slope, somewhat adjacent to the stairwell. So
Okay. And did I understand you say that there might be restrictions on which direction you can go, or did I mishear that?
not on these particular trails,
Okay.
but as we evaluate trails in the future, that's one of the things that
Oh,
we're looking at
okay.
is if there's line of sight issues, you can do directional type trails. If there's soil condition issues,
Mhm.
and you're going to get more erosion if bikes are moving at a quicker speed downhill, we can tackle those. We look at that as we're moving, as we're evaluating the trails.
So the real advantage to making this an official trail versus a social trail that we just let people use is that it'll be on maps and shown as being open.
Yes.
And what else? What other advantages there?
Well, not only that, is they're highly used to begin with.
I know, I understand that.
And so it's basically accommodating the need or the want by the community that has existed for several decades.
Are we going to treat it any differently, though? I guess is my point.
Uh,
Suddenly maintain it more? We're going to...
yeah, no, it'll be part of our regular, I mean, we've done a fair amount of maintenance to it anyways over the last several years because of the amount of use on this trail. But it'll be a sanctioned trail and it'll be wrapped into our regular maintenance program. Yeah.
Okay.
The big benefit is that this trail is already sustainable. Just by the conditions of the routes that or the more formal, more heavily used route that's out there, and the soils are perfect. We don't get a lot of erosion in this particular area. Yeah.
Thank you.
Other questions? Just a few, Mike. I've been to longtime runner and mountain biker to some extent, not more for a good workout as opposed to any screaming downhill kind of thing. But you mentioned not a safe trail, but the trail holds. But is that? I guess my question is just around the safety of a trail that we're not maintaining, but it holds. Like, is that how much work is required to maintain a trail? So there's no work for us to maintain these existing trails, is what you're saying?
The social trails
Yeah,
that we're
yeah.
going to be authorizing?
Yes.
Yeah, so there is there's no more effort that will go into these trails than go into our regular single tracks or I would say single tracks. I wouldn't say fire roads.
Okay.
Yep.
I know Save Mount Diablo has acquired some properties. It seems like in the Lime Ridge area, but is there a connection to Lime Ridge and Mount Diablo State Park now? Or maybe there has been. I don't get to Lime Ridge a lot, but I don't think there was a connection. The properties haven't been connected yet.
Not through a trail system. I mean,
Okay.
obviously you've probably written this, is you can get on the roads,
Yeah, yeah.
right? You could go through Lime, then jump on a road and find your way up in at Mount Diablo, but in the state parks, but not through a trail
Yeah.
system.
Does as a liability question, just because I'm interested, does the city I think maybe Fran was hinting at it, but does the city assume any more liability by making it an official or putting it on a map as a real trail?
No.
Okay, that's a good one. And then lastly, and I brought this up to the Mount Diablo Mountain Biking Association, the guys that are in charge of that, and that's about using or the city maybe getting behind some sort of program about encouraging mountain bikers to have a bell. I don't know if you and I talked about this at any point along the line, but I couldn't imagine riding my mountain bike not having a bell, right? Because you're coming behind walkers or hikers or runners, or you're going downhill, and like not having a bell is kind of. My brother lives in over by the headlands there, Marin Headlands, and everybody's got a bell. So.
Yeah, and so there'll be more presentations coming this year, and bells will be part of it. It was a topic of conversation for the committee, and there's, like anything we deal with in life, there's various opinions about bells, and the big angst with bells for some people is the impact it might have on wildlife and pushing wildlife away from certain areas, especially on a weekend if a trail's really busy and you can hear bell, bell, bell. Not only that, there might be individuals that are just hiking and just want to be, some peace and quiet, and they're hearing a bell. So we're trying to avoid, we're trying to make sure that the line of sight is adequate so that we don't need some of these other measures. We're probably not going to be able to do that everywhere, but that is our focus when we're out there evaluating these trails.
Great. I think that's all I have.
I just want to make some comments, not questions, but I really appreciate, Mike, you going through this, especially the updates on all the recommendations, the 17 recommendations. Tremendous progress by Corey Frazier and your staff to get through so many items, many of which have safety elements to them, and that's why they were priorities, and why perhaps the use of the checklist for the trails was not as extensive as we might have thought at this point. But by using that for the 2 social trails that you're looking at to convert, it's totally appropriate, and it should help us get the safest result. So thank you very much for your efforts, your staff's efforts in working through all these items over the last 5 years.
Thank you. You want to open up for a public comment?
Sure. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak on these topics? Step right on up. You have 2 minutes.
I know, I always cut down my little speech, leaving out important things, I think, but in only 2 minutes, it goes quick. My name's Barbara Guinness. I've been a resident of Walnut Creek since '96. In Mike's presentation, he's talking about converting, 2 social trails to official trails. I want to speak specifically on the trail in Lime Ridge. There's a lot of native plants that exist right along the edge of it. It's also very narrow. I don't see where you're going to do stairs and have bike traffic go by. There's some, I just looked today, it's about 2 feet, and there's a drop off on the other side, and the soils are very erosive. Anyway, with mountain bike traffic going through there, a lot of the native plants will be disturbed or even destroyed. And some additional information for that particular trail, since I only got a short period of time here. This is also an area where a wildfire erupted in September 2024. City staff stated that the cause was undetermined. A retired firefighter viewing the area stated it appeared 3 to 4 start points, indicating the fire was not accidental. This is right in the area where they want to put this social trail, open it up. This is also an area where their quarry fencing has been vandalized after being up for only 1 week. They had to put in 6x6 posts to prevent them from cutting through it. Not far from that, there was fencing put up by city staff. It also was cut by vandals right through a split rail fencing. Quarry signage was removed and thrown to the ground. It's also moved elsewhere. I see where it is, but anyway, and also the area right above this proposed new social trail to be official trail, there's all kinds of illegal bike trails, jumps and things way up at the top of the quarry area. There's also multiple illegal single-track trails that drop down. Okay, anyway, and a mountain biker died there in 2023. Mike kind of alluded to that, but to me, I don't think it's a good place to open up as an official.
Great, thank you. Nothing to approve there for us, Mike, was there? Okay,
That was an information report. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Great. And lastly, item C on the commission consideration is the staff report in regards to the playground equipment replacement project at Civic Park and Walden Park.
So this is a fun one. I was before you guys in October, just kind of giving you a brief update on where we're at. So I'm glad to be able to bring it back. We've made some progress, and I'm happy to run through it with you. I'm going to move through it, at a moderate pace. So I think you'll be excited, and you'll be happy to see with some of the recommendations that we're suggesting here. So I'll share a little bit of the background with you, and then the 2 parks that we're talking about as a reminder are Walden Park and Civic Park. We have a public outreach process that I want to run by you and get your feedback on, and then we'll briefly talk about next steps. So this body back in '23 recommended that we put $500,000 of capital money aside during the 24-25 capital budget. That was approved by council. As I mentioned, last October I was here giving you an update, and currently we've been working with a consultant who has put together a number of renderings for us, and that's kind of that's our focus here today. We have 3 options for each of the parks, along with some cost estimates that I'm going to share with you. So these overview images are a little tough to understand, or a little tough to get details about. But if you can envision this, the reason we don't have a real image overview is because there's so many trees there you can't see the playground. But there's currently a resilient surface pathway in the same shape that it is here, this blue pathway, and then the rest of the park is bark and will remain so. So we've broken it out into really 3 different zones. Zone A1 is the swings. The swings at the swings here at Civic Park are in great condition. And so we're going to be saving the swings, and then you can see we've got a 2 to 5 area, which is A2, and then a 5 to 12. And just so everybody's aware, 2 to 5 is the appropriate age group for that type of structure, and 5 to 12 is the appropriate age group for the other structure. So a little bit more detail. Like I said, the swings are going to remain, but we're going to add what's called a generational swing, which is where you have a toddler or a young person sitting in the child seat, and then the parent or the guardian can sit across from them. Some of them call them iPhone seats, not iPhone. It's something along those lines, where you're constantly taking pictures of your child or whatever. They're really fun. We have one up at Arbolado, and it's really heavily used. Normally you'll see spring rockers, which actually have the spring you would normally ride back and forth. This second arrow here is indicating a seat that actually just spins. This is the 2 to 5 area. has, you can see the spring rockers there on the bottom left. It has obviously a number of slides. There's a ramp system that center arrow is pointing to make it more accessible. All of these playgrounds will be accessible and meet the ADA laws. Some of them just have ramps and some do not. Underneath the slides, there's various panels. There's areas where kids can kind of hide in like the general store type panels and those things. And sometimes it's just fun for kids to get away from all the noise and you know, collect their thoughts away from everybody else. This is the 5 to 12 area, and if you notice, there's not a lot of shade in this particular option, so just keep that in mind. The 5 to 12, pretty active, a lot of slides. You can get up to some 6-foot elevations. It's got some musical instruments right across from where all the parents are relaxing and sitting. I think that's wonderful when you can just beat on the drums all you want and disrupt everybody. But these don't all have to go in these locations. These are just options. And if you look at above the last set of drums there, you'll see a 4-seat teeter-totter, and there'll be a better image of that here in a minute, but they're getting creative with a lot of this stuff. So that was option A. And I'm not sure, Chair, do you think it's better that I stop at each option or just go through them and then we'll circle back? What do you propose?
I think we could just go through them.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. So option B, you know, it's very, very similar. The swings are going to remain. We're going to put that generational swing in there. This is the 2 to 5. It's got, you know, some ground panels. It's got some fun spring rockers there. It's introducing a little bit more shade, as you can see. It also has a ramp system. There's some additional seating. There's a retaining wall that goes around the entire playground. We're looking at adding some additional seating for parents. This one's pretty unique because there's opportunities. There's kind of hiding opportunities as you're climbing up the ladder. You see the structure on the outside to the right. There's ladder system in there, and you climb up to the next level. When I show you the image on the other side, there's actual bars there, and so parents can see in what's going on. But from this image, you wouldn't be able to get a very good view. But very active. There's a lot of different amenities in this playground, in this 5 to 12 playground. There's some musical instruments over there, and when we get another look at the other side of it, they have what's become very popular is these rope climbers. Kids really like those. You'll see that centipede-looking device there on the middle left. That's really just a climbing apparatus, and I think you climb up and you slide down or something along those lines. You can see the bars that I was talking about on the upper story, and then there are some panels underneath there, some play panels, educational type panels. Same here, very similar with option number 3. A little bit more shade. This structure here, you see how it has the 4-person teeter-totter, has a lot of balancing, climbing. This one just looks like it's really quite busy and a lot of fun. You'll see a little bit more seating on the far right of the slide. This old school climber there on the left side, kind of where the arrow is, and then some ground panels and a few more musical options as well. This is just another look at it here. Lots of slides so that everybody has opportunity. It's not really a ramp system, mostly stairs, which is accessible. And then this is the 5 to 12, or sorry, the 2 to 5 structure. A little bit more shade, some ground panels. There's some climbing devices. Obviously, you can see the slides. And it's, you know, some of this stuff is about bringing color and you know, fun to the area. So this is civic. We'll circle back to this for certain chairs so we can have a little bit more of a discussion. But
Can I ask a question here, though, since you're done with civic?
Yeah.
So, you know, there's pictures of kids in wheelchairs out on the bark, but explain to me how bark is accessible to someone in a wheelchair.
Yeah, state law states that bark is accessible. Yep, sand is not, but bark is actually, it's accessible. It's within the ADA limits. Yeah. It surprising to me as well, but it does meet
Did we
the,
consider anything else? Or did you have any public input, like from the park users about that?
so we're going to get to that.
Okay.
In fact, if you, I'll share a little bit with you right now. The purpose of me bringing these renderings, which aren't, they're not perfect, right? They're just kind of a general idea of what it is. If you're comfortable, you know, I'm going to dress these renderings up a little bit. Then I'm going to go out with my public outreach program, which has us with pop-up tables at the playgrounds, showing the parents the pictures. We're going to have some additional panels out there. Oh, I like this educational panel. I like this panel for this reason, and kind of do a plug and play and let the parents help provide some feedback. We're going to do online surveys. We're going to go to the farmers market. We're going to go to First Wednesday, some of these different pop-up events that are around town to really drive this. We're not going to turn this over in the next couple months because we're going to wait to get all the feedback, make some changes based on the feedback, and then come back to the Pros Commission and say, this is what we've heard from the community. You know, please help us, give us some further direction.
Okay, just one more thing about the bark. I mean, we don't have bark at the All Abilities Playground at Heather Farm, correct?
We do not have bark at the All Billy's Playground. We almost did, and the county came up with about $500,000 of their own in lieu park funding, which helped us get to that next level, which is the resilient surface.
I'm assuming there's a big cost differential between.
It's huge. It's huge. And staying with that same example, I don't know the last time you were out at Heather Farm, but the portion of Heather Farm resilient surface that is closer to the 5 to 12, that park is kind of broken up with those turf mounds. The portion that's for the older kids needs to be replaced badly. But to replace all that resilient surfacing out there is close to $1 million just for replacement. Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yes.
I was going to ask, are there any plans regarding some of the other parts of the playground, like the sand pits, the train, or the rock structures? Like, what are the plans surrounding those?
Great question. So the sand pit is going to generally remain the same. We do have some options. They're not up here about changing up a little bit how the flow of the water comes out. Right now, there's 3 troughs. You push the button and you turn the funnel, something along those lines, and it goes to different troughs. And so that is fairly worn out. It's not that uncommon because of the sand wears those instruments out. So we're going to be providing some opportunities to make improvements to the sand. The small train we installed not that many years ago, that small train will remain. We'll put the new resilient surface around it. And the boulders at this point are going to remain in place as they are.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, one of the big, this is why the shock factor here is the dollars, right? This almost eats up the entire. I mean, if we were to go with option B there in the middle, it almost eats up the entire budget. What this includes, you can kind of see on the bottom right there. It's the removal of the equipment, the installation of the new equipment, those curb mounting seating, and then there's an area in between where the boulders are and in between the actual structure that really gets muddy. It's mostly dirt, and it's hard. Even if we were to put bark in there, because of the angle, the bark would just slide out. We want to put synthetic turf in there so that the area is more usable. There's more opportunity for people to put down blankets and those types of things. When we go forward and put in a new structure at Civic Park, the first thing we're going to hear about is parking, because everybody loves the new playground, right? And they all are going to focus on the new playground. It's going to be the new thing. And so we want to make sure that there's enough space for everybody to have an opportunity to put their blanket down and relax. And it's a shaded area so the turf won't get that hot. Okay, so as I roll into these options, these options at Walden Park this is only a 2 to 5, are somewhere in the range of 200 to 250. when we only have 500,000. So just be keeping that in mind, and I'll share the rest of it here with you in a minute. But this is the, this is the 5 to 12, sorry, at Walden Park. You know, not a lot, not a huge improvement from what we currently have out there. I'd like to see a little bit more. I think some of the shading is pretty cool, but it just isn't super exciting to me. I'd like to see a few more panels and those types of things. So this is just a different look at it. We've got some musical panels over there, and this is going to be an interesting topic, right, with the music, because the music can become very distracting and very annoying, and it's also loved by many of the community members that want their kids out there and being active, and it's just another amenity. So it's going to be some good discussions. We're going to learn a lot. Just another look at the same option A. This is option B. Kind of has the pirate ship kind of theme with the sails there. You know, a ground panel. You can see the climbers there in the background. You know, that twirly slide, and then there's that kind of storefront feeling that you get underneath the one of the platforms there. Sorry, did I go too fast there? You guys comfortable with that? Yep. Different look. This one has a lot of shade, as you can see, which is valuable over there. The playground, around the playground itself at Walden, has a fair amount of huge oak trees, but they're not over top of the existing playground. So, you know, generally, you know, you got your slide, a couple climbers, you got your music. It's kind of a different look. What we haven't had in some of these, and it just dawned on me now, is some of those seats that I was sharing earlier that spin, or maybe some spring rockers or something along those lines. We haven't had those here at Walden so much. You know, this is for 12-year-olds. It's 5 to 12, right? Okay, so this is the 2 to 5 area. So we have a 5 to 12 area, and then the 2 to 5 is the sand pit. It's almost all sand with resilient surface around it. The benefit to improving this area is what you see here, and I'll show you a number of slides. It's between $40,000 and $50,000 to do this work. And so if you chose one of the other options that are in the $450,000 range, and then we just move forward with updating the sand area. The sand area at Walden, by the way, is the most active area, because typically over in Walden, the kids are much younger, and they really like the sand. The other benefit we're going to do over here, and it's not shown in this, is we're going to bring a water source over there. And so they're going to have another water source to play with in the sand. That is a huge element at all these parks. In fact, that green table that terraces will be one of the water elements, so the water will kind of terrace down through there. So these are the numbers. This actually includes the sand area, but if you pull the sand area out, it's somewhere. In fact, I think I have it. Yeah, it's about $45,000 for that, and that includes the demo and the replacement costs and those types of things. So I already shared this portion of you. These are next steps, is to kind of get a nod from you guys. About, hey, we're comfortable with the approach. Love to hear your feedback on what you're thinking in terms of cost or amenities. One of the reasons I still wanted to move forward and show you what we have here at Walden, and I think it's important that we go out to the community, even if we can't afford it. We go out to the community and get feedback from them on what they would like to see in that area in the future. And so that we do have a shovel-ready project that's already been vetted through the community. If we're going to be out there anyways, we might as well get this information. And the next cycle, or even halfway through this cycle, the commission could make a recommendation that, hey, we want to move forward. And there is money in the Park and Lieu Fund, or maybe there's some more grant money we can find, something along those lines. So So I think it's important to get feedback whether we're going to do this portion of it this year or not. So just my 2 cents. I'm waiting to get your feedback. So if you're comfortable, I'm going to move forward with the public outreach process and, move forward with the design and circle back with the pros commission once we get the feedback. Yeah, so your action for tonight was just to provide feedback on the proposed playground renderings and the public outreach plan.
Feedback for Mike?
Mike, could you talk a little bit more in detail about the public outreach plan? I think you kind of give us a framework, just like the detailed dates and.
So don't have dates specific, although there are events already on the calendar. I just don't know the specific date. I mean, the farmers market's every Sunday. And so moving forward, we'd put a plan together and be able to attend a couple of the farmers markets, share the information with council. They're there almost every Sunday. We got our First Wednesdays that I think start. First Wednesdays is a program that's run by Walnut Creek Downtown, typically on Cypress, but sometimes they've done it on Locust Street. We'll be out there. In fact, we'll be out there at I think there's 4 of them this year. We have a number of different projects going on in public works, so we'll be out there advertising a lot of this stuff. And then the weather's turning, conditions are getting better. We want to be out there at Civic Park and Walden Park with our tables, our pop-up tents, drawing information as soon as we can, within the next 30 days. Getting out there and start getting information. The other part of this is pushing this information out through our public information officer on social media, on Nextdoor, to try and drive people to provide feedback through an online survey. And we can push that out relatively quickly, May, June, those types of things. And yeah, lastly was the farmers market as an example. Yeah.
When are you planning to go out to bid for this?
So we are, it's a good question. Obviously, we've got to gather all the feedback and come back to the pros commission and get the nod from the commissioners that we're going to go out for a formal bid. I would say it's late fall, probably, maybe middle fall.
Are we generally having comments now? Did you want comments from us?
Questions first, and then we can open it up for public comment. Chair, did you look like you had a question?
You'll bring it to the pros commission in the fall for further discussion after the public comment?
Yeah.
And then after that would
go out to bid.
go out to bid?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we want to make sure that we give all the feedback we need from the commission before we go back out to bid. And I'm sure the community is going to be interested in what package we're going to go out to bid with as well. Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay. Would any member of the public wish to make a comment regarding this item? All right. And with that, we will move along.
Yeah, I would just ask that if there are any other comments, please give them to us now. And if there are no other comments, if you can give us a thumbs up or something. We don't need to make a motion, but I'd like to hear from you if you're comfortable with this approach in this direction.
I have comment.
So I like the options presented for Civic. I think they're very good, substantial options. We'll make that a pretty outstanding play area. But in Walden, I know it's a smaller park, but it seems like in comparison, it's a much reduced facility. And there's no swings, there's not as much climbing areas, that type of thing. So it's a smaller park. They have the basketball courts, they have the Frisbee golf and stuff like that. But is it really just a matter of it's more of a neighborhood park that serves a smaller set of people traditionally? Is that a lot of it, or is it a space issue, or?
Yeah, I mean, we could, so there are swings there.
Oh.
Unfortunately, I didn't show them, and I should have. That was an error on my side. The swings are going to remain because they're in good
Okay.
shape, and we are going to put a generational swing. We are going to add a generational swing, assuming it fits with the 4 seats that are out there.
Mhm. Okay.
The seats, the generational swings are a little bit wider, and everything has to have a specific buffer around it. And that's kind of what reduces some of the amenities that you have in this small space is because you need these big buffer zones. And the buffer zones have changed since this playground equipment went in back in 97, 98, something along those lines. And so you don't get that, all those amenities that you want to see in these areas. In fact, you go out to them and you say, wow, it's so spacious out here. Why couldn't you done this or done that? And California laws just restrict us from doing those types of things. So it doesn't mean that we can't get more creative with some of these options. But for example, if somebody is standing on the bars on the top platform there and jump, you have to have everything 6 feet or more away from that, because that's they figure a toddler of that age can't jump that to that distance. That's how it's all measured. But there's challenges with the laws that we have to navigate through or
Okay.
comply with. Yeah.
That makes sense, actually. I will say this, I really, really like your idea of bringing water to the toddler site. I think that'll just be a really, really nice addition. So I really like that.
It's good to hear. We have a drinking fountain over there, and the maintenance staff that has to constantly tear the drinking fountain apart and pull all the sand out, they'll love it too. Yeah, no doubt.
I think you've got a good package to start the feedback process for the public, and I hope that we get some good results from that to kind of steer the direction of the projects. So
Thank you.
good start.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate the packages, the options that you presented. I have one question about parent and guardian seating. I didn't specifically see in the graphics that you presented.
So there's some seating. I'll show you. And assuming the seating works out okay, we're going to be, so if you were at Walden Park, I don't know how familiar you are with that, but there's a raised, it's almost like a retaining wall around one of the oak tree wells. And it's really not a retaining wall, it's more of a concrete bench. We're looking to, oh, I'm sorry, I'm going the wrong way, I apologize. So you see the seating on the far right there? Right here. The seating on the bottom right. We're looking to add some seating to the retaining walls, both at Civic and at Walden, for parents so that they can be closer, especially in the 2 to 5 areas. So they're not sitting so far away under the grass that they can literally be in a comfortable spot instead of sitting on concrete. Just another element to make it a little bit more pleasant for the people that are there overseeing the youth. In fact, I have grand plans to put shade structures over the seating and all that, but that's only if a budget didn't exist. So we are where we're at. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks great, Mike. Thumbs up. I will just add that because Walden Park's location next to the Iron Horse Trail and the Canal Trail there, it is a huge starting and finishing point for runners and hiking groups. There have been many people there over the years myself. So thank you for fixing the water fountains. We appreciate it.
Oh, yeah. You're welcome. Yeah.
Anyone else? Think we're good?
Yep. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. Okay. Commissioners' reports. Any commissioners want to share a report from some group or organization they've attended? Meeting? Okay. Staff reports?
Yes, I have several staff reports here. The kickoff for the start of the ball field lighting over at Tice Valley Park was today. Contractor is now on site. They've started mobilizing. By mobilizing, they've set up a fenced-off area, and I think they brought a trailer or two out where they can meet and those types of things. I haven't been out there just yet. But today is the actual kickoff day for the Tice Valley lighting. Synthetic turf. The start date for the synthetic turf project is next Monday. Well, let me back up. So the Tice Valley light project just started, and it's scheduled to be completed by mid-July. We're working with PG&E to hopefully get them to flip the switch and turn it on when we're completed. But we're still working through that permitting process. So we feel confident. We've got actually a pretty good relationship with PG&E. So we feel pretty confident that the lights will be ready to be turned on once they're installed. Synthetic turf project is about a six and a half month project starting in middle of April, finishing sometime around the beginning of November. We've been working very closely with the soccer club throughout this entire process, including monument signage, banners. We have a new entryway that we've designed, kind of more of a formal grand entryway that we've designed for Ball Field 1 that we're still working through those details and getting pricing for. And it's going to be quite the process. If you can envision the two fields, Ball Field 1 and 2 are about 5 acres, and they need to remove about 12 to 14 inches out of 5 acres of land. That is a lot of soil. There's going to be a lot of trucks going in and out. It's going to be, quite the construction project. And obviously, once they remove it, they got to bring it back in layers and get back up to the correct elevation. So it's a good project. We're looking forward to it. The voters of Measure O are starting to see their efforts take place. So we're really excited about that. The new aquatic and community center project. We are still patiently awaiting some of the permits from the regulatory boards. We feel like we're getting pretty close to getting those. We're currently scheduled we got a couple options, and this is important for you guys, as you may get some questions over the next few months. One of the first phases is to expand the nature lake by approximately 16,000 square feet, and at the same time reduce the size of the concrete pond by about 16,000 square feet. And probably going to do both of those projects through the same contractor, being done at the same time. And so the other challenge we're having is we have to get 2 boring samples from inside the area of the concrete pond that is going to be eventually going away, because we have to figure out what engineered soil is going to be put in place in order to support the new foundation. And so part of the challenge with that is we've got to put the second phase out to bid here fairly soon. And if we don't get the regulatory permitting, and get to start in July, we're not going to be able to pull those boring samples. And so we anticipated this. We applied for a separate dewatering permit, which we feel we'll hopefully get this week or the beginning of next week. And this additional dewatering permit will allow us to start dewatering the pond much sooner. And then we can get out there and get those samples as we need to complete the design of the project. So the pond, and don't hold me to any of these dates, this is definitely a moving target. We could start draining the pond as early as the beginning of May, just in a few weeks from now. That being said, some of the information, and all this, by the way, is going up on the city's website so that we can point to people and they can get this kind of brief information. If they approach the commissioners, I'll send you this link tomorrow when I send the invite to you, and you can push this information out, whether it's through Nextdoor or just through social events. What we don't know is when we dewater that pond, what the smell of the organic matter is going to be, and it's challenging. We've got weddings that are going to be taking place over at the Garden Center and other events, not necessarily out of the Heather Farm, the existing Heather Farm Rec Center. But we're looking at we don't know what the organics are because we haven't seen them. Obviously, we've gone in and done some sonar testing, so sonar is probably not the right word, but we know the depths and those types of things. We know that, and as you guys can envision, that portion of the lake that we're removing is typically where everything floats over to when the winds blow that way. We know there's a minimum of 18 inches of organic matter at the bottom of that pond because we dewatered it enough to be able to get in and measure that. We don't know what's in the bottom of the main portion. And right now we're thinking we're going to be removing that organic matter, but we're going to make a more in-depth decision once we get those ponds drained and really see what we have in there. So we're not anticipating any large cars or probably a few shopping carts and maybe a few bikes are in there, but we don't know what we're going to find. So so that's going to be great. So that's the pond. Yeah, I'll
Right.
send.
Ask a clarifying question?
Yep.
So you need the borings to issue the specs for the second phase?
So we need to pull the soil samples and send them to the lab so that they can determine. So they take these samples down. I think one's 8 foot and one's 12 foot down, and they'll come back and decide, okay, since you're not going to be excavating down 8 or 12 feet, here is the engineered specs on the materials that you need to put in place, compacted in order to hold the foundation in the future.
Yeah, okay, I get that, but my question is more about what is that holding up that you don't have permission to drill yet?
Well, we can't get in the pond. We need to get in the pond, and we need to get the equipment in the pond in order to drill it out.
Right.
And you can't, the boring company won't do it if the soil samples get wet.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, so we got to dry the pond. We got to get in there, physically get in there.
I have another question
Yeah,
also. So I know you've covered this in the past, but remind me, like the Walnut Festival won't be happening in Heather Farm with the turf project?
The Walnut Festival
'Cause
will
it's
not be
That's
happening.
usually in September, right?
Yeah.
And this project's not done till,
Yes, that's correct. The Walnut Festival will not be happening in Heather Farm Park. We have moved the Art and Wine this year over to Civic Park. The recreation team is not here. They are the ones who coordinate those events, so I'll have to follow up with you and what's going on with the Walnut Fest. But I thought at a minimum they're taking a year break, but I have to double check that.
thank you.
So two more updates. Court resurfacing. I mentioned this, I think, at the last meeting, but we are going to be resurfacing the courts at Arbolado, the tennis courts at Arbolado and Rudgear. And in addition, we had the funding to resurface the basketball court at Arbolado too, or as well. And then lastly is just a brief update on what's taking place over on Sutherland and Fossil Hill Project. The pilot program is, I would say, is going fairly well. We receive feedback daily from not so much from the homeowners, but from visitors. A lot of phone calls that come in. We do get some emails here and there. Some people are supportive and some people are frustrated that they don't have access. Obviously, the roads, the streets over there in the county. So although we're supporting what the county and the neighbors wanted, we have no jurisdiction over what takes place on those roads. Most people understand that at this point, and they're questioning why we closed the parking lot down. And the reason we did it is so that people aren't driving back and forth to try and see if there's a spot it's about 7-9 spots, depending on how people park. And so it's not accommodating very many vehicles to begin with, but we're trying to prevent this back and forth. And this is a pilot program. And so we're trying to measure our successes and failures and see what we learn out of the process. So for the most part, I know that the neighbors are fairly happy with the way things are working out, and some of the visitors are a little bit more challenged with the situation. Yeah. And that's all I had.
Great, Mike. Very informative. Hey, a couple quick things backtracking a bit. When did the tennis courts get resurfaced on Arbolado and Red Gear for my tennis friends?
So there was a scheduled conversation today, to the best of my knowledge today, and we're still waiting to hear back from Lifetime Activities, but beginning of July at Arbolado. And they'll do Arbolado first, and then they'll go to Red Gear.
Okay. And then there's on Ballfield 1, there is a outdoor exercise equipment, right? Is along that trail?
That's correct.
Does that get have to be removed in order to complete the turf, or does that stay? I don't remember if that's a cement area or
Yeah, so some of it's actually in the trail, and we're going to be able to save some of it, the portion of the trail that's going to remain. Some of it is right along the edge of the trail,
yeah.
and it's not bolted in. It's in footings, and so it would have to be cut. And so we'll circle back and add some equipment. And that's a good point. I'll come back once that project's complete back to the commission, and there might be other opportunities that weren't thought of during this process, and maybe we can have a conversation about funding and other amenities that can be added. Because you know, a lot of that during the day, as you know, that's those two soccer fields, they go underutilized, right, during the school day. And so we want to benefit all the users that are using that portion of the park, and the walkways are a big part of it. And so it'd be worth visiting in the future. Yeah.
Yeah, my mom lives over there, and I do occasionally walk that. And there are definitely people in the morning that use that, and the equipment out there, and they push the strollers, and moms work out on those. So, okay, great. Anything else? All right. We are adjourning this meeting. This concludes the April 7th, 2025 Pros Commission meeting. We are adjourned to the June 2nd, 2025 scheduled meeting. Thank you very much.